We've been delving into in an attempt to understand the nature of emptiness. And the stories that have been told over these last days have really not seemed to bear on that at all. They seem to be more in the line of seeking the nature of reality. But then we have to say that's the way of alchemy. But before continuing in that vein, there's inspiration to tell a Zen story for this young man. It's the story about that time when there was a certain Japanese shogun who was the emperor of all the known world. And being the numero uno in the world, the monarchs of other countries would give him honor by sending him gifts. And one such gift came from the Raja of India in the form of a magnificent Bengal tiger. A huge, vicious, amazingly large beast. And the shogun was very, very proud of this animal. He had it in an enclosure in his palace garden. And whenever anyone came, he would go out and he would show this creature to those who came. But there was an occasion when the shogun gave a great feast, and he invited all of the finest of his samurai swordsmen, the greatest swordsmen in the land, plus a few other well-known. And one amongst those other well-known was the Zen master Hakuin. So after they'd finished their feast, the shogun, as usual, took his guests out to the enclosure where the tiger was pacing back and forth, its yellow eyes gleaming. And as they stood there, as fate would have it, standing on the shogun's left side was his chief swordsman, Lord Yagyu, the best swordsman, the most famous swordsman in all of the land. And on his right-hand side stood the master, the Zen master, Hakuin. Well, as they were gazing at this great beast pacing forward, backwards, the shogun turned to Lord Yagyu and he said, "I believe in your training that you have to become fearless. Become fearless so that you can vanquish any adversary. Isn't that so?" Lord Yagyu said, "Well, yes." So the shogun said, "Okay, go show me." So Lord Yagyu had no choice. He had to go over to the enclosure, and the servant opened the gate, and Lord Yagyu walked in, and as he walked in, the tiger pacing backwards and forward, he started to eyeball the tiger. He eyeballed the tiger, and as he eyeballed the tiger, he got closer and closer, so that the tiger had to back until it was backed up against the wall of the enclosure. And of course, any animal that's put in that position is going to attack. But Lord Yagyu, being the consummate samurai swordsman that he was, he knew exactly the moment when the tiger was going to strike. And he took out his iron fan and he slapped the tiger over the nose. The tiger was totally confused, which gave Lord Yagyu the time to march out of the enclosure proudly before the tiger got back his aplomb. So when he got outside the enclosure, the shogun said to everyone, "Wasn't that an amazing display of fearlessness, and they all agreed, of course. And then he turned to the Zen master and he said, "Don't you think that was the most amazing display?" The Zen master said, "Oh, it was okay." So Shogun was a little bit peeved about this, and he said, turned again to the great master Hakyu, and he said, "Well, I believe in your Zen training that you also become fearless, that you also arrive at that place where you are invincible. Isn't that so?" "Well, yes," said the master. "Well," said the Shogun, "you go show us what you can do." So Master Hakyu spat in his hands, walked over to the gate of the enclosure. Servant opened the gate. He stepped inside. But as he stepped inside, his gaze just wandered around and to take in everything that was there. And he took a few steps forward as though he was walking in some beautiful rose garden. The tiger was pacing backwards and forwards now, very nervous after his encounter with the samurai swordsman. But the master just kept walking and gazing around till he got close to the tiger. Well, the tiger was somewhat hesitant, but then he began to sniff him around the feet, and then the tiger rolled over and showed his belly so that Master Hakyuin could scratch him. Well, there was absolute silence in the hall and all of those present. And when Master Hakyuin walked out of the enclosure casually as he'd entered, the Shogun said, "Tell me, how did you do that?" This is your question. Not right now. This is your Zen koan. Isn't it so? Now we get back to the nature of reality. There was a certain dervish, and he, like all other dervishes, was looking for truth and enlightenment. But he decided to join a group of pilgrims, dervishes also, seekers also after truth, who decided that they were going to go to the shrine of a great Sufi saint that was located in a land far away. So they set out on their pilgrimage, but their journey took them to the edge of a great ocean, and they had to take a boat. But as fate would have it, when they got out into the far ocean, a great storm came, and their boat overturned, and with great difficulty they were able to make their way to an unknown shore. When they scrambled up the beach, there was nothing. They were thirsty, they were tired, they were hungry. But being dervishes and seekers as they were, they decided that before going to look for water and food, that they would gather around and pray. And it was decided amongst them that they would each make an oath, if they were saved, if they came back to civilization, that they would keep an oath, each one of them. So after they'd lit a little fire and they were sitting around the fire, each one of the dervishes gave their oath. One said, "I promise that I will take care of my elderly parents until they draw their last breath." Another said, "I promise that I will give alms to everyone who seeks from me." Another said, "I will keep all of the rituals, I will pray, I will fast, I will do whatever it is that's designated for me to do." But then it came to the turn of our dervish. Rahim was his name. But when it came to Rahim's turn, he could not think of anything. When suddenly, there came into his mind, and he couldn't stop it from coming out of his mouth, "I promise, I make an oath that I will never eat elephant." Well, everyone decried him. "How can you make such an oath as this?" But they soon forgot it because they were thirsty and hungry, and they needed to go and find food and water. So they went off in different directions. And as it so happened, several of them found a small and frail baby elephant, which they killed and brought back to the beach. Everyone feasted on the body of the small elephant except Rahim, who kept his oath, even though his belly groaned with hunger. After eating, they all lay down to sleep. But in the middle of the night, they heard a great thundering sound. They all awoke, afraid, and in the moonlight they saw lumbering towards them a huge elephant. The elephant came to each one and sniffed with her trunk, and then trampled the dervish underfoot. Rahim lay there terrified, awaiting his turn for the elephant to come. When she did, she sniffed him all over, and then she gently picked him up and put him on her back and lumbered off into the underbrush, and soon they came out on a pathway which led to a village. The elephant dropped Rahim at the edge of the village and then disappeared into the underbrush behind them. What resonates in us deep down, looking now as we are at the nature of reality, recognizing that that nature of reality encompasses the three levels of existence: the nitty-gritty level of cause and effect, the level of magic and intuition and the occult, and then that level of interrelatedness that's called the bliss of oneness. Combined, they become Satchitananda. And therefore we have to recognize each one of them as being reality in one form or another. What's more real for you? This that you can touch and feel? That which arises in you now as an intuition, that has such a force now that it has to be answered? It has to be acknowledged? You can no longer say, that's my imagination. And this level of interrelatedness, oneness, they are all reality. So to look into the nature of reality, we need to be in that state of Satchitananda and shun nothing. Not one thing that comes into our mind can be negated or considered other than the nature of what's real. This is what we're going to pursue over these coming days with these abstruse stories. In our quest to come to that place where not only we understand the nature of emptiness, but we recognize ourselves as that. Thank you, thank you.